Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Everybody's just coming in through the virtual door, so I'm going to just wait a few minutes until everybody appears to be in before we start properly. So enjoy that cup of tea you're having. Okay, let's start. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our XR Network Plus seminar series. This is number 3. We've done 2 already. This is our 3rd, and this one will focus on 2 projects. We are very, very grateful that Goldsmiths, University of London, and Alexander Whitley Dance Company, and Ulster University and Prime Cut Productions are joining us to talk about their respective R&D projects, both broadly under the sort of theme and banner of performance, live performance, and XR. I'm not going to introduce them individually. Hopefully they'll be able to introduce themselves and their context on the project. In terms of a running order for today, so we've got 2 short talks. So what we're going to do 20 minutes for Ulster and Prime Cut to do their talk, followed by 10 minutes of questions and answers. Then do the second talk, Goldsmiths and Alexander Whitley Dance Companies, and then a further 10 minutes of questions. And then I'll do a very quick parish notice at the end about stuff from the network. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to invite Henry and Emma to the stage. Over to you.
Cool. Thanks, John. Share my screen here. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, so.
Awesome. Great. Whoop, sorry. I think we skipped ahead. So cool. So apologies for that. Hello, everyone. I'm Henry. I'm the animation lecturer in Animation and VFX lecturer at Ulster University. Very happy to be here and just to share our really exciting, very fun R&D project that we worked on with Prime Cut. Not sure if Emma is with us yet, but
I'm here
Emma...
now.
Oh, hi, Emma. Cool.
Hi.
Awesome. So I'm as primary investigator at Ulster University, representing my co-investigators as well. Emma is with us, who's the artistic director from Prime Cut Productions as well. So just going straight ahead into our project. So at the start of the project, what we wanted to do is just meet up with a local theater company, which ended up being Prime Cut. And we met up in a workshop just to kind of ideate and see how real-time rendering can fit within a theater setup and a live performance. So we entered the project or the workshop with no expectations because we are coming from a very diverse background. So the Ulster University team is made from animation, games, and VFX backgrounds, except as opposed to the theater background from Prime Cut Productions. And through that workshop, we started to see where our aims and objectives lie and how we overlap with Prime Cut. So Emma, do you want to talk a bit about what you as a theater company were interested and what the aims were from your side?
Yeah, certainly. I suppose that from our point of view, obviously, again, to reiterate what Henry said, we're coming from very different backgrounds, and main challenges for us is that we make work that's going to tour. So we have to be able to have a very reliable system that we're going to be able to trigger at very precise times. We don't have a lot of time to get a show in. We have maybe, you know, one day to get a setup and to run all of the tech and to be up and running. So, I mean, these, and also I suppose for us too, it was the tension between what comes first, the tech or the performance. And for us, the performance comes first, and the tech or the assets are there to augment the experience for the audience or to illuminate the narrative as we move through it. And we are also very interested in terms of creating a pipeline and kind of understanding the changing world of theatre and and also the training of and development of young artists from right across the cultural sector coming through in Northern Ireland.
Thanks, Emma. So from the Ulster University perspective, what we were looking at is just trying to understand what is and how we could represent or use or define real-time rendering within a theatre setup, and developing a pipeline that is sustainable for what the aims of Prime Cut's productions are. So for their needs and their aims as well, and making sure that the technology that is and the techniques that we're using are democratized in a certain way for it to be accessible for studios just like Prime Cut Productions. And at the same time, all of this projects was really overlapping with the interest of the staff and our research, and especially with our technical upskilling aims and objectives as well. So this was the perfect opportunity for us to collaborate. So through that early stage workshop, we started identifying parameters, and some of them Emma already has touched upon them a bit. In terms of the equipment, the budget, the space allocation. So as Emma mentioned, some of these the time allocation in terms of understanding what the stage is and how it looks like, that comes at the very end of the process, as opposed to an animation, VFX, and games. We already know that it's going to be projected on screen, or it's going to be in a game, or it's going to be on a platform or a console like PlayStation or VR or PC. So we know exactly the dimensions and the requirements that we need from the early stages, but that was a bit different with theater. And there's a lot of stuff that we needed to consider as well in terms of noise. So the machine noise that are going to be in the backstage, the tech dependencies, and also the language barriers between us and theater, because during that stage, early stages, there was a lot of terminology that we're using that Emma and her team weren't familiar with. At the same time, vice versa, some of the stuff that Prime Cut Productions were saying, we didn't really understand exactly what we need to do, so need to figure out all of these different points. All of this while keeping the story and the performer the focus of the performance or the theater experience. With that said, with all of these parameters, we needed to also find a way to continue support or see how we can set up Prime Cut Productions to continue developing these projects on our own without our constant interference within the project. So some of these, through that workshop, we identified some certain parts of the pipeline that we could use and feed into for the project. But at the same time, we had to start developing our list of assets. And some of the things that we needed to consider was, if we're using real-time rendering, so Unreal Engine, for example, for virtual production techniques in theater, we need to figure out how to manage noise levels and reduce crash risks. So if we're running an environment or a simulation straight from engine onto a projection, that increases the risk of crashes, of issues. So how would we mitigate all of these different points? How would we also figure out how to design the space or understand where the projections are going to be if we're working 6 months in advance and we don't really know what the stage is going to look like? The other assets that we need to start thinking about is the main assets that are going to be projected on stage, which is a tree that at the time was there was a possibility of it being a hologram, so we were working towards that. But also it had to have different representations across different seasons, the colors of the leaves, the density, the emissiveness of them, the vibrancy, all that sort of stuff needs to be provided to Prime Cut to have complete control over during the live production. There's also a main character, a digital character, which is a badger, a quadruped. So in this case, using a bipedal mocap suit might not be the best approach. So we need to figure out how we can get a badger to interact and talk to the performers and interact with the digital elements on stage as well. There's a few other things, just to kind of name a few. There's the night-day cycle of the sky with auroras, stars, and different assets, and as well as grass, flowers, roots, and transitional scenes between one scene from the performance to another, and how we can transition between those points. So from these, I'm gonna talk about the main ones, which is the tree. So how did we proceed with the tree approach? So because we were trying to get the tree to animate with all of its intricacies and the leaves, the vibrancy, and the style that we want to go for, everything that you're seeing in this video here is controlled in real time, including the colors, the speed of the animation, the vibrancy, the colors, and even the stars and the clouds and the auroras in the background. They're all controlled with a joystick. And that could be mapped to anything, not just a joystick. It could be a keyboard, it could be a console, whatever it is, we can map it to that. So this is the sort of things that we use in terms of color even. And because this is a metaphorical representation of what the tree is representing in the play or in the theater performance, we decided to go for a wireframe look to mainly to focus on the essence of the tree itself. And this is an example of how it's being projected on set that we've done, I think, last week, just to kind of see how it looks on set. And even though we decided that we probably will use a hologram sheet or a mesh, we decided to abandon that and project it on a black wall. And because of that contrast between the tree itself and the black wall, it does look like it's popping out on screen on stage. And it was provided us with different kind of approaches to look at the tree from different angles in terms of the roots, in terms of the tree itself. And because what we did with the material, that it's all driven by parameters that can be controlled, we can create instances from that tree, so we can control the color of the roots separately from the trunk, from the branches, and from the leaves itself. So all of these are separately controlled and can be mapped to work simultaneously at the same time in real time. So the plan was eventually to bring the stage or the projections and map them as a game, as opposed to just a projection that is coming straight from engine. And that is mainly to mitigate those crashes and issues. So it's running on a much lighter system. So it's running as a game that is going through the PC, and it's all available, but all of these playable elements that say the tree's growth, the leaves animation, the color, the vibrancy, the auroras, everything is being controlled in real time through a game that is being projected on stage. So ultimately what this is turning the entire scene and the projection into a playable game, or in other words, a digital puppet on set. So these are some examples that we've done from different angles. And maybe, Emma, if you want to come in a bit and just talk about just the way you thought about how we can use these to look at the tree from different angles going through, and these different ways of seeing.
I think sometimes when you're coming from a different sector, it was hard for us to really understand how we could utilize these assets. And in a way, we had a 3-day workshop so that, you know, that we could get a handle on how we can use the assets that the guys have made for us. And in a way, it was more exciting for us than we anticipated, because we weren't able to create the hologram. We were able to, I think, really play about with the assets and the understanding of how, as in a game, that we can move through time and space. And that kind of has really opened up, I think, another world, which is much more exciting, less kind of naturalistic, more abstract, in terms of being able to take the audience in a journey from the sky down into the tree, through the branches, and end up in kind of a very beautiful abstract but animated image to sit with. So yeah, I think the interactive nature of it was kind of revealed to us in the workshop, and we're really excited now, I think, to really start to play about with the material that that Henry and his colleagues have made.
Thanks, Emma. So the next bit is the Badger solution. So because it's a quadruped, we can't use a mocap suit. We need to find different solutions to it, and we wanted to make sure that this is as easy as possibly accessible for Emma and her team afterwards. So what we did is we, instead of using, it's a combination of pre-made animations, facial mocap, and digital puppetry. So in the first instance here, you'll see Mike, who developed the badger and made 52 blend shapes, which is our different elements of the badger on the facial expression of the badger. And he's tracking that through an iPhone. So from the neck up, the badger's facial expressions are mapped with an iPhone, and the neck down, it's going to be mapped from a joystick. Now, this is not perfect, but this is mainly how it's working at the moment, where we can trigger specific types of animation and bring the badger back in different positions. It's not perfect, but it's mainly about polishing the animation and just adjusting some of those blueprints to kind of work together to move the badger's body from the neck down using a controller or a joystick or any other tool we can map it to. So it doesn't have to be just a PS3 or PS4 or Xbox controller. But the neck up is also mapped by the blend shapes. Now, what we could do, so this is a quick example from the day where both the facial expression and the joystick digital puppetry that is being controlled are working simultaneously.
You can't trust anybody these days.
So this way, what is missing at this point is mainly just applying the animation principles. And why that is, what I mean is, so when we want to kind of create the facial expression of the badger, we really need to kind of exaggerate the way we move our muscles on our faces and do a performance, which might get in the way of actually being able to enunciate properly. So what we're going to do is going to adjust those blend shapes or these kind of different sculpted expressions on the badger and exaggerate those to implement the 12 principles of animation. And with that, when a performer or an actor is using the mocap, facial mocap application, the model itself will be doing all the extra exaggerations to help with the performance, and that will be also applied to the hand motions for tracking those through the controller, and at the same time with the triggered animation that we can trigger at any point during the performance. So the third aspect that we wanted to kind of go into is the issue with space. So one of the things we looked at in terms of understanding how we can design the space or have a better understanding of where everything is being projected without actually building a set, especially that we don't have the capability to build a set this early on. We relied on VR scouting, which is a technique that we use in virtual production. So we can just adjust and see where we can place cameras or ideate together and work with building or ideating or designing a certain space together from whatever digital environment that we create. So this is an example here where I'm just kind of playing around with some assets that we have on a space that we got on Unreal Engine 5, and then we can just kind of bring those in to kind of start adjusting and organizing the space the way we want to and having a better idea of where we could project certain elements and then even organize or redesign some of the space that we could. So just moving the aspects of the space or the elements of the space and bring it back in, for example. Now, the other element of that, instead of building the set from scratch, we could rely on 3D scanning. So on the day of the workshop, myself, Emma, and some of our colleagues, we got permission to go and take photos and scan the space really quickly. And this is a quick Gaussian splat that I did. But the point of that exercise was mainly that we could just scan a space here even though it's not perfect, but at least we can just bring in the shoot and then start working with the projections or the elements to kind of just organize and build a set virtually. So at least the team that are responsible for building the digital side of the set and the projections know exactly where we're going to present, where we're going to project, what sort of position the projector is going to be at, where the screen is going to be, where the angle and perspective is going to be positioned in the set. So this is a really key element that we could just to be able to have that flexibility to understand early on how we can orient the camera so they can be in correct perspective with the actual stage of the physical space. So in terms of the outcomes at the end, we now have a much better understanding of what companies like PrimeCut Productions have, different ways of seeing, as Emma mentioned about the tree, different ways of seeing how we can experience the theater using different projections, digital cameras, virtual sets, and then mainly about understanding how we can provide that skill set and develop those skill sets specifically within those areas. So to kind of continue supporting our partner, which is PrimeCut, we've set up a GitHub repository with the project itself, which means we can, if they need any specific corrections, we can go into this and correct them, and they will have a continuously updated version of our project. Our students are involved with that now, and we're looking at supporting PrimeCut through our graduates, who will be able to help and continue what we've done. And they're currently working on getting more funding to kind of help support this. In terms of publications, we have currently ongoing 3 potential publications to do with the translation of language between animation, games, and theater, as well as the development of character design principles or character animation principles that are suited for theater production animations and performances, and as well as the summary or the paper or a publication about the tailored experience of theater through a VP pipeline. And in terms of other activities, we have the theater performance, Emma, I think it's in October, or at least that's the plan.
Yep.
There's the Beyond Conference Render Festival in 2025, another talk at Queen's University, and potentially other talks depending on publications. So that depends on where we could publish as well. Some publishers would like us to present our papers as we were being published as well. So these are all different avenues that we explored, and we're really excited to see what's to come. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Henry. That's brilliant. Thank you so much both for sharing all that. I've got some questions as well, but I'm going to make sure that everybody knows. So there's a Q&A box in your Zoom controls. Everybody, please put your questions in there, and we'll see them and pick them up. And I'm going to have kind of like chair's rights, because as we're waiting, I'm going to ask you a question, Emma. So going through this process, so there's loads of potential, and I really like how you sort of focused on various kind of like areas of interest. And I particularly thinking about touring and some of the things we were saying at the top about, reliability, like show controls that are meaningful to tech crew, whether they're the in-house at the venue or your own teams. Like, have you spotted any sort of practical limits where like the potential for technology, it will always be sort of slightly constrained by things like the differences in venues and how varied they actually are? So when you're bringing together a tour, what you can and can't foresee doing.
I think it's kind of that's where the development was really important, because to understand the level of throw and distance that we need from the 12K projector in order for us to achieve the effect that we want. So that kind of takes out the option of putting it into a studio space. And we understand now it needs to go into a main space. So, that's fine if you understand what the parameters are. And this show is like, it's in the Belfast International Festival, and it's going to Dublin. And so, we are hoping that it will have an extended touring life, but it will have to work within the parameters that it's a main stage space. So when one understands the parameters, that's fine. It's kind of, that's why it's kind of essential, I think. And we got some funding from the Digital Evolution Fund in from the Arts Council in Northern Ireland, which bought us the space, to buy the PCs, because we work off Macs. And so we had to buy, you know, the essential kit, and also kind of, of us moving forward with kind of understanding what the issues are, really working with the different system.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a question from Erin, and they're asking, is the plan to share it more widely with the theatre sector in the UK, not just academic talks and articles? So yeah, where do theatre professionals get to hear more about the project?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that depends. That's going to be primarily Prime Cut's choice, because that's their project, that's their theater performance, and that I think there's going to be also the playwright's approval as well. So I think that will be up for purely Prime Cut. So Emma, maybe you can answer that if this is something that, as an example, after you finish your performance, maybe if this is something that you would like to present to as a case study to other theater groups.
I think that we can. There's definitely will be the opportunity to do that. I think there's like a genuine active interest in terms of what the crossover of these technologies are, and you know, and how we can use them best in our storytelling. So I think that there is definitely an appetite, and I'm kind of thinking there's like international conferences. We're part of IETM, which is the All Europe Theatre Practitioners, and we're a member of that, and they have like 3-4 conferences a year which we attend. It would be a matter of kind of saying, if you've got any, we presented at it quite a bit before, of kind of offering to do a presentation on the work. I think it's always really nice to do those things in the context of this is what the work looks like, that you're not, it's not an academic, from our point of view, it's not an academic exercise, it's a creative artistic adventure, which may feel, you know, it's not foolproof. This is an inquiry. So I think that within the context, whenever the work is made, there'll be lots of opportunities, I think, to be able to discuss that with our colleagues, both in Ireland, the UK, and in Europe.
Brilliant, thank you. So there's perhaps more of a reflection from Ben Dalton than a question, but there might be a question we can find in it. So Ben said, the challenges of bringing a badger to life reminds me of the challenges described in early animatronics, such as Harry and the Hendersons, where joystick controllers were used for Bigfoot, and how Hensons later learned from puppeteers themselves to make performable controllers. And then Ben says, conversely, some games native approaches suit theatre more to, like the grey boxing and the being able to set out stages in low detail rather than using full detail models for planning purposes and for stage design. I think that's a really good point. Were there any other? I'll find a question that. Were there any other sort of moments where either a games-based approach or an animation-based approach hit home really well for theatre practitioners, and vice versa?
So I think we did see that Jim Henson Company, with like some of the latest Muppets films, I think they were using some animatronics, and they hooked them, or they created a live link between the animatronic and the Muppets to hook them through Unreal Engine, which was a very interesting thing. It's a nice kind of case study that they did on more on their Epic Games webinars, I think, which was really interesting. But yeah, I think this is where some of the things that while we were working on this, it was definitely getting the vibe back to like Georges Méliès, and just seeing how we can, using that historical connection between animation and theater. And some of the ideas that we threw around was possibly using VR controllers to map them to an arm with some IK rigs to kind of see if we can get a more expressive approach to the badger movement, maybe some other animatronic approaches. We were looking at Move AI app at one point just to see if we can get like a movement with, but unfortunately, just the way the app was working, it didn't really come across, or we couldn't get enough credits for us to do enough tests for that, and that was at the end of the project. But there is so many different avenues that we can just try different things in terms of digital puppeteering. But for this project, we were definitely keeping in mind that Prime Cut Productions are a traveling company, and we need to keep that as simple as possible. And we were just last week, we were discussing potentially maybe not using the controller, but creating specific triggerable animations based on what the actions need. So this is something that whether we notice that whether it's for film, games, or theater, knowing the actions of the character beforehand dictates how it's going to be designed, how it's going to be animated or controlled, and that's part of the problem solving aspect of it. But yeah, no, absolutely, this is like definitely loads of opportunities to kind of explore in terms of what we can do in terms of digital puppetry. If we can link it to the engine, we can do it pretty much, which is really cool, but it's just finding the solution, the right tech for that.
Yeah, thank you. And there's one more question. I think, Emma, you've typed an answer to it perfectly. So Constanza, there's an answer to your question in the Q&A box there. And I think we're running perfectly to time, Emma and Henry. So I'm going to say once again, thank you very much for your talk. Thank you for taking us on a whistle-stop tour. I realised you didn't have much time to unpack the project, but that was really, really useful. And I really enjoy sort of the under the hood versions of like projects, like, you know, and sharing all that stuff. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in various places, theatre-based and university sector conferences and whatnot in the future. Okie dokie. So I'm going to very quickly now introduce our next talk. So Goldsmiths and Alexander Whitley Dance Company have been exploring integrating two tools that they've individually previously been working on into one sort of like mega tool. And I'm going to hand over to them both now, and they're going to explain that much better than me.
Thank you. Hello. Shall I start, I guess?
Yes, please.
Okay. So yeah, so I applied to XR Networks. You'll see there's also the British Academy logo on there. I'll explain that in a second. But me and Alex have been working together for many years now, since about 2020, on different iterations of digital dance and remote, a tool for remote collaboration, bringing bodies together into shared virtual spaces to move together, dance together. So maybe go to the next slide. I have had a 1-year British Academy Innovation Fellowship to work with Alexander Whitley Dance Company. But of course, there's not a lot of project funds in a fellowship. You know, there was funding for workshops, but not so much for dev. And one of our main goals was really to bring the work we've done over the last 4 years together into a very sort of forward-thinking model. So the XR Networks funding allowed us to do that over the last 6 months. Our research agenda was, well, as I said already, to build on the work that we have done together over the last 4 years as part of the Goldsmiths mocap streamer project, which in the past has involved some lockdown dance sessions, bringing people together into shared virtual spaces from their homes, as you can see in the second photo down there. An artistic residency that was global, with artists in Thailand, India, Brazil, Malta, LA, and in the UK. And one of those projects specifically, which is the bottom photo you'll see there, was focused on accessibility and inclusivity, and we took that to South by Southwest in 2023, called Figural Bodies, and which is the image here, which is a dancer from Kandoku Dance Company dancing with a dancer who was in the studios of Target 3D in London. And they were linked and performing together within this projected space, although there was a VR iteration of that. And a lot of our outputs have also been sort of open source. There always has to be this kind of for affordability and accessibility and open source angle. But within the remit of this project, we wanted to align my research goals very much with Alexander Whitley's innovation strategy, which when we applied was based around a sort of an artistic work called Future Rights, but it took a slight deviation in direction due to some Innovate funding. So maybe Alex, you want to talk briefly about that?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Alexander Whitley. I'm the artistic director of Alexander Whitley Dance Company, and we, for the last decade or so, have been exploring the intersection of dance and digital technology. And yeah, the work we've been doing with Dan over the last several years has really enabled us to extend an area of our practice in the exploration of motion capture technology into an area of thinking around the possibilities for remote collaboration and creation and potentially distribution through this kind of the streaming of motion capture, but I guess specifically in the context of dance research in an affordable and accessible way of doing that, thinking about the kinds of technologies that independent artists, dance practitioners are likely to have access to and be able to engage with themselves, as opposed to having, you know, a motion capture studio to work with. Yeah, so we for the last several years have been developing a compositional tool, a creative platform for movement based on motion capture technology. And it became apparent that there was an opportunity to think about how we could integrate the technology behind the motion capture streamer with this platform to enable for a greater range of collaborative possibilities. And so that's what we've been concentrating on recently. Shall I skip on to the next slide? I think it's the video next, which gives a bit of an insight into a test we ran here. Well, half of it happened here in this our studio in Hackney Wick in London, and the other half was at a studio in Brussels. So we were experimenting with the integration of the mocap streamer into a live version of Otmo, our software platform that we've been developing. And what I'll go on to explain more about what Otmo is and does later on. But in essence, it's a platform that enables very quick iterations and creative variations from a motion capture feed, be that a live stream or a pre-recorded motion capture sequence. And yeah, we're looking at possibilities for integrating that into our creative practice and workflows in a variety of ways. So the test we did at the studio last week was the first chance we'd had to see how this kind of plug and play version of the mocap streamer could work with having mocap feeds from two performers streaming into the same virtual environment, and then for a range of different kind of visuals and patterns and formations to be generated from that. So on the one hand, there's the kind of interaction of these two performers with each other in that shared virtual environment, but also then the kind of another layer of creativity kind of added to that in terms of the kind of the building of a more elaborate scene of movement. So I'm Alexander Whitley. I'm a choreographer and artistic director of Alexander Whitley Dance Company. And we're here at our studio in Hackney Wick, where we've just done an experimental test performance of the latest iteration of the mocap streamer. We had Gabriel, a dancer from our company, here in the studio, and Marion in the studio in Brussels. They were both wearing the same motion capture suits, so their data was then streamed
to a server, and we were able to see them both appear in the same shared virtual environment.
I'm Dr. Dan Strutt from Goldsmiths University, and I lead the Goldsmiths mocap streamer project. I've been working all year with Alexander Whitley and Alexander Whitley Dance Company, funded by the British Academy. We've also got some extra funding from XR Network to bring together our own research around mocap data streaming together with Alexander Whitley's own original software, which is called Otmo.
We've been working to integrate the mocap streamer into Otmo Live, which is a live version of a software platform we've been developing that enables a range of creative variables to be generated from motion capture streams.
And the point of this is really to provide a one-stop shop with the minimum of technical ability, click and connect with other dancers remotely.
I'm Luca Biada, creative technologist. I'm working with Alexander Whitley, and I'm the original developer of Otmo. And today I had the pleasure to play with the dancers and perform on my side.
Luca was able to work his magic to generate lots of different patterns and variations and different kind of visual effects from those motion capture feeds.
The main point of Otmo is probably that it allows a very quick and easy manipulation of motion capture data. In this case, Otmo Live allows to manipulate motion capture data coming in real time, and it was a pleasure to work with Mocap Streamer and test out the capabilities of Otmo in a multi-country scenario.
So today we were testing Mocap Streamer app and this new exciting software integration.
And today I was dancing live with another dancer who was in another country using this amazing software and experiencing kind of in real time how their movement can affect mine even when we're not in the same room, which is always interesting and kind of challenges your own sense of your own body and how that's influencing them over distance, and then that being manipulated and you becoming a kind of form that's integrated into a bigger, exciting picture that can be ever-changing.
Very interesting to dance with someone, imagining he or her is here and then they're not, but I see that we are interacting, so that absence, dancing with an absence, yet seeing a presence is very nice.
There's been a strong focus on inclusivity and accessibility. So we frame a lot of the developments around this project about people being able to join in and dance on their own terms from whatever space they're in. We really effectively and seamlessly brought dancer from Brussels and from London into the same virtual space for a very tangible interaction today. So I'm very, very happy.
There we go.
Hi. So yeah, like we've been doing this work for quite some time, as but there's always technical obstacles to overcome. We started off with, a more complex system with, IP addresses and port numbers and some infinite complexity. And then we landed on a good solution, but there was a lot of ghosts in the system, like false connections and things. So we're actually on version 3 now of the mocap streamer software that was developed specifically for this integration. So it uses WebRTC. Now, WebRTC is a protocol that's actually used for web chat rooms and stuff like that. It's very, very simple and reliable and robust, and it does all the connections automatically. So basically, when we talk about data streaming here, we're talking about you just simply join a chat room, you name a room and join it, tell the other people which room to join, and they type in a username and the room name, and then they can connect. And I don't know if you can see here, it's quite small, but we're looking at in the top right the native software for the mocap system, which someone's asked in the chat already, is the Perception Neuron suit by Noitom. They've been project partners for many, many years, so they've given us a lot of support. And then it's simply going into the broadcasting via UDP into the mocap streamer app, which picks it up automatically on the system, on the local system. Then it's shared peer-to-peer from through WebRTC, as if we're all in the same chat room, all looking at the same messages. And then it outputs as both UDP or OSC to, at the moment, just a Unity build, so with our own Unity plugin designed so it automatically picks up the skeleton and delivers it. And in the future, we would expand, hopefully, project by project to other, animation software such as Unreal or Godot or anything like that. Paper Plane Software is our developer with assistance from Fenice, who is Luca, who you just saw in the video there. Moving on.
So yeah, I'll say a bit about Otmo, the movement creation software that we've been developing. So this is a project that started out a while ago and was initially focused on thinking about how we could take the kind of creative and technical innovation we were putting into our touring theatre productions and digital experiences and apply that to dance education. Through quite a long process of consultation and research, we arrived at the idea of effectively trying to create a platform similar to what has existed in other industries like music and film, photography, in terms of a simple and accessible editing platform that allows people to compose, edit, and sequence movement. And the basis of that being that the accessibility and affordability of motion capture technology has come down an awful lot in recent years. It's a lot easier now for people to generate motion capture files, but it still largely remains in the hands of very skilled people to do anything with that data once you've recorded it. So there are really advantages to people from various creative industries in having a platform that enables a much quicker and easier way of doing things and of being creative with motion capture files once they've been generated. But for the dance industry and other performing arts industries, there are real advantages to having a virtual space in which the kinds of things that are done in a real studio setting can be explored, because there's significant barriers to access for people to begin to engage in the kinds of thought processes and creative explorations around these art forms when you need a studio space and performers to begin to enter into that process. So there's a list there of the things we're kind of focusing on with it. So the software as it exists at the moment, this is still a kind of prototype we're developing. We're hoping to release a version of it soon, but the software allows you to select from or import motion capture sequences from a library, as well as different environments, character designs, and music, so you can very quickly experiment with different combinations of these things. You can position and arrange those characters in the space, generate the kinds of patterns and formations that you saw in the previous video from each individual sequence that you place in the environment. And alongside Dan's research, we've been developing a customizable avatar so that you can adjust the body shape and appearance of the characters to allow for a greater kind of range of representation of body types. And then, there are a range of different kinds of effects that can be applied or generated from the different tools within the software. So I'll show you a quick video that kind of explains it better than I just did there.
Yeah, so moving very quickly now. In terms of research, we took a sort of three-pronged approach to all with an angle of accessibility, inclusivity. Remoteness is obviously the most relevant one here, and the solution we came up for that is integrating this new version of the Streamer app directly into Optimo. Avatar representation and agency, which has also been mentioned by Alex already, and we developed a fully customizable avatar system. We're still working on it because it turns out it's infinitely complex. And immersivity as well as an aspect of being able to jump into a physically rendered 3D space from anywhere where you are, regardless of your ability to travel, etc. And we developed a prototype of a VR version of exactly what you just saw. With InVR Space, who's a company in Berlin, a long-time collaborator also, and we took that to SIGGRAPH in 2023. So the next slide. So
yeah,
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I'll take this one. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so as we kind of covered, Optimo there's a few different variations of it. So predominantly we're focusing on the development of a kind of standalone PC-based app, which uses pre-recorded sequences of motion capture. But in parallel to that, we've been developing the live version and the VR version. So our initial focus of this research was to look at integrating the mocap streamer into the live version. So that enables this kind of direct live interaction between performers. But the kind of next step, so things we're really keen to do following on from this is look at integrating it into a VR version of the app, which we've begun to develop, which will enable a much greater sense of embodiment and presence in the space, as opposed to the performers having to refer to a screen at a distance to understand their relationship to the other performers. And then there are other possibilities of how it could be integrated into the offline app as well, to allow for kind of direct feeds of performance capture into the app. So someone could be then kind of in an editing suite, composing and structuring things on the basis of the live performance feeds that are coming into the app. So yeah, there's lots of exciting possibilities of how we can build on this kind of initial first step of integration.
Yes, we developed these through a series of workshops last year with an emphasis on diversity and accessibility. Some really great days and great responses with young people, with old people, with people with various disabilities, and with sort of with diverse dance styles as well, with IRE dance. So that was really, really rewarding and a good sort of ground for testing and lots of insight gained. Next slide. So yeah, just to almost in a way to summarize, as we've said many times, this is a one-stop shop. We've always tried to have it simple, open source, the minimum possible of technical insight or knowledge. I mean, one thing in the past research, even though we had this streamer tool and we were connecting dancers with each other, dancers don't necessarily understand how to, what their IP number is or what broadcast port they're using and stuff like that. So the idea was to eliminate all of that. Then by bringing it together with Optimo, I should say first, but even with that click and connect system for the mocap streaming, you still needed to have an Unreal, or you needed someone to create the animation sitting next to you to work with you over a prolonged period of time to create custom avatars and rig them and then animate them according to the data that is being received. Because there's no tool. It's just raw data that's being streamed. You could maybe see it inside the visualizer of the mocap system itself, but this is just a dry figure, sometimes even a stick figure. So the union of these two pieces of software literally is, you can instantly connect, you can instantly see that data being rendered. You may have noticed that the version that was shown in the test we did last week is slightly different to the desktop app because it's a slightly different avatar shape and design, but slowly these things will merge together and grow. So as is, you start the Opmo app and it will automatically open the Electron app of the mocap streamer, and then it's simply a question of clicking send or receive, and it will do it automatically. I think we've already mentioned next steps a little bit. I've said we've done a Unity plugin of our own. We will do an Unreal, and also we want to add more mocap systems into the mix. When we tested last week, we were testing with two Neutom perception neuron systems, but we've done a lot of work with a university in Australia, Edith Cowan University, and they have a Vicon optical motion capture system, and we were just so close to getting that working, but couldn't get it quite working in time for today. So we just used the perception neuron, but it is a plan to use to on a project by project basis to add different mocap systems into it. So you can be whatever mocap system you have access to, you should be able to click and connect with someone in a different mocap system completely, and yet you will still see your figures coming together in the virtual space. We also want to sorry,
anticipating.
Yeah, we also want to with the WebRTC system that we're using, you can send audio and visuals. So a problem has always been syncing up audio and visual along with the data stream. So using this, we would like to bring in audio and visual streams, video streams as well, so we can have everything perfectly aligned. And bringing this into VR, bringing everything together in the future will be the next steps. But that's it. Beta testing this year. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Last thing, we're having an event actually tomorrow with a live demo. It's both online and in person at Goldsmiths, and it starts at 5 p.m. tomorrow. I should have put that link on this page as well, but I forgot. And we're also doing the British Academy Summer Showcase, 12th to 13th of July, and we've got our own room there, so that's going to be a really exciting showing of this. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Sorry, we overran a little bit.
No, don't worry. Thank you both for all of that. There's loads in there, and so you're right, if we dive straight into a couple of questions. So both of them from Erin, make sure audience members put your Q&A in the box. So first off, it's around kind of commercial productions. Has anything come out, or I guess is anything emerging from these tools by way of either I guess standalone commercial productions or integrating in with sort of more traditional productions?
I mean, it's always been experimental R&D, and this is still very much a niche practice. And even though we have creative works, and there's various, especially in the artist residency, because I'm not an artist nor a technician, I'm a film theorist, but we had 6 residency projects, and they all created works, and there's various iterations of that going on, both in research contexts and other developments. But really, it's we've done several showcases that are available on our website, which handily is on the screen right now, mocapstreamer.live. But these were always performance showcases rather than performance productions, and it's never been commercialized so far. But a lot of the people we work with are actively commercializing this, or doing stuff which is charging a fee, like Clémence de Beeg has been my senior researcher and has been working very closely with Alexander Whitley Dance Company on various things as well. And she's an active practitioner doing this kind of work. So, you know, it is commercializable, but we're just one step before that.
Brilliant.
But I guess in terms, I mean, so this is partly responding to the second question there as well about the about how we started developing Opmo. In that, yeah, as I mentioned before, it was initially an education project, and we're actually now developing it as a commercial product, and that's partly as a result of what we have recognized as an opportunity within this idea and the software as we've been developing it. But it's also in response to our struggles to fund its development through the subsidized art sector. You know, we could only get so far on the grants from the Arts Council, for example, and you know, they've been really helpful in supporting it, but we needed to look elsewhere in order to provide the funding to really develop it to the point that we would be, you know, happy to release it or for it to be used publicly. And so yeah, that's where we kind of looked at the opportunities to get funding through Innovate UK, but obviously there's very much a commercial focus through that. So we had to kind of pivot a bit and reframe the project around something that would have a clear kind of market focus. So it's been quite an interesting journey for us to go on as a company who, prior to this, you know, we've only ever made kind of touring theatre productions and digital experiences that are presented in an artistic context. But then to be thinking about product development and commercialization of that is a very different kind of mindset. But then I guess in terms of integrating mocap streamer into it, there is then potentially a vehicle through which this kind of research can be commercialized and, you know, I guess kind of have a more widespread impact than it might if it stayed within these kind of academic research contexts.
Yeah, and on the second part of that, you know, how do creative sector organizations get involved in projects like this? I mean, I think the mocap streamer app is freestanding and open source, so I mean, you can find that through our website. But if you want to be interested in beta testing, Alex, I think you go to the website, right, the alexanderwhitley.com, and sign up for early access and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, you know, it's also reflective of our company's practice, and you know, we've been looking at integrating digital technologies into our creative practice for a long time, and I guess in doing so, we both see the direction of travel of the kind of commercial tech sector and understand where you know, where things are moving, where opportunities lie, both creatively but also, I guess, commercially as well. And I think what's become increasingly apparent is that there's knowledge and experience we have within the art sector, I guess, particularly around movement as technologies are developing towards spatialization, you know, the mapping of space and the tracking of movement within it. Spatial computing is a very kind of zeitgeisty word at the moment, and you know, that's reflective of where technology is going, and that we have kind of valuable knowledge inherent in these kinds of more traditional performing arts practices that you know, combined with these new technologies, can do really interesting things. So I think that's where we're kind of sensing the opportunity for maybe a slightly different kind of model of operating as a company, and also, you know, the potential to bring knowledge we have out into this other kind of sector that's you know, potentially more sustainable in the current context of the subsidized arts.
Yeah, I mean, there is a sense, and people have said this a lot, that a lot of this work happens in little silos, and there's not a lot of, you know, it's on a project by project basis, and then sometimes a lot of the knowledge gained on that project dissipates or isn't carried forward in the rapid pace of innovation. So yeah, both me and Alex have been focused on, you know, finding some way of creating a platform that is really, really easy to use and intuitive to use, so that the take-up could be more, because you don't need to retrain in a completely new skill set to even use it, and I think that's what the industry needs, really. So it's so people can really see the potential in it.
Yeah, brilliant. We've got time for just one final question then. So Ben Dalton's asked around in the live performance context that you were experimenting with in the project, where there are moments of lag, or so I guess are there moments of lag, where are they felt, and are there any forms of artistic expression in movement that lend themselves well to any inevitable bits of lag that you get?
I'll start off on this, and then Alex can
Yeah,
step in, because we've been working on these questions for such a long time. I would say that Ben says here that that is like turn taking. So we've anticipated this all along, right? This idea that there might be a need for a call and response, particularly when we were like anticipating testing with Australia, for instance, which we never managed to get working. But we've never experienced it to that extent where it's had to take that form. Everyone's, the first question on anyone's lips is delay and latency, and we've never experienced really strong or tangible latency. We've always said that half a second would limit what would be possible in terms of real-time responding to each other in the virtual scene, and we've never even got close to half a second. It's never really felt like that, which has always come as a surprise to us, to be honest. But Alex can definitely speak to this. The lessons we have learned is there is a need to slow down, be less like virtuoso and really kind of attune with the other dancer and the person there, and just to take one's time with it, to find each other and respond to each other in the space, especially when interaction designs are built into the characters, so you can actually really work out what the sensitivities are there and how close you can get to each other and whether you can mirror each other and move around each other. But I'm looking at it from a very sort of experiential point of view. Alex can speak to that much more as a dancer.
Yeah, the latency hasn't, as Dan was just saying, it hasn't been nearly as much of an issue as we'd feared it would. I think it's a lot to do with the fact that the mocap streams are actually quite small in terms of their, the file size or the bandwidth that they require. So fortunately, that the interaction does feel really live. I think the biggest difference, certainly in the way that the app exists at the moment, and as I was referring to before, and that you're having to make a translation of your position in a real space into what you're perceiving of the shared virtual environment, and then kind of understand how to modify your movements that way. So there's that constant kind of translation and point of reference that you're having to kind of look at in order to understand your relationship to the other performers. But hopefully, integrating this into a VL or XR experience will change that, and there'll be a much more kind of direct, kind of tangible first-person perspective on the encounter you have with the other dancers you're interacting with. But there's still a big difference, obviously, in terms of the nature of your interaction with a digital avatar than there is to a real physical solid body, and so that's where I think a lot of what we're thinking about and exploring with these the kind of variations, the different visual effects that can be generated from that motion capture stream are potentially making up for some of what's lost when translating movement into this kind of virtual environment, and allowing for different forms of interaction and relationships to exist. And there's an awful lot to explore creatively there, I think, in terms of recognizing and understanding what changes when translating movement from one environment into another, and then what opportunities emerge for thinking differently about the kinds of relationships that can exist in those spaces. Because just trying to replicate exactly what we would do in a kind of real environment, in a shared space in the real world isn't that exciting to me. I mean, there's some practical advantages to doing that in terms of being able to enable people to meet and collaborate without having to travel. But creatively, I think there's so much to delve into and explore in terms of different ways of thinking that can complement rather than replace what ordinarily happens in a rehearsal studio.
Yeah, brilliant.
Sorry, yeah, I would just add, like there is, having saying that we don't experience latency does not mean that everything always goes according to plan. It is, like I say, experimental R&D, and we experience lags with the video stream more than the data stream. For instance, we experience lags in audio. Sharing audio is one of the most difficult things, weirdly. And of course, then, if you actually go into my website and look at some of the performance showcase, realize that sometimes the video stream, the performance video stream, the way people are experiencing through the screen at home, it breaks as well. Zoom is very, very stable relative to other systems for sharing this kind of thing. So yeah, it's not quite there yet in terms of stability enough for a fully commercial, and that goes for everything happening in this field. Really, it's very, there's always something. There's too many moving parts. Essentially, there's too many agents within the mix, but we're tantalizingly close, and by bringing together Goldsmiths Mocap Streamer with Opmo, we're the closest we've ever been to a really, really robust, stable system that anyone would be able to use. Yeah, I would note that there's one little extra bit on that last question that Ben asked about seeing different character designs in the Opmo context, and that, I believe, is something that you're working on right now, Alex.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like piecing different bits of technology and different systems together always throws up issues in terms of, just compatibility and integration. So there's a version of Opmo Live where we have many different characters that we can switch between, but connecting it to the mocap streamer meant that a lot of that had to be rebuilt. So we were limited in this initial instance to just this single character design. But yeah, absolutely, the ability to very quickly switch between and transform the appearance of the virtual characters or avatars is absolutely a kind of key goal for this.
I really like the idea of having guest 3D artists designing characters. Amazing. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Dan, Alexander. Thank you so much. Henry and Emma too. I'm gonna just bump you off that screen just so I can share mine just one more time. With my parish notice, limited this time to just to signpost the next seminar. So our next seminar is on the 17th of April, so it's always the third Wednesday of the month, 2 p.m. And we've got one of the R&D projects that the network's supported, which is from Edinburgh Napier University, who have partnered with BR Tonong, and theirs is around sound design, particularly around 3D 360 video contexts. We'll also be welcoming Professor Helena Daffin from the University of York, who's going to do a sort of like a roundup. What's really interesting at the moment in terms of research and R&D in XR and sound. And Helena is a co-I of one of the CoStar Live Labs, and so we'll be drawing on some of that context as well. So we hope to see you then. We're going to sign off now. So just on behalf of everyone that attended, thank you to our speakers, from our speakers. Thank you to everyone that came along and listened, and the excellent questions that you posed for them. If you're not already signed up to the mailing list of XR Network Plus, please do. You can get there via the website, and you can see us on the social media stuff as well. Okay, all right. Thanks again. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.